Hello everyone, and welcome back to day 26 of the 30-day build challenge with me, Nisi. We only have a few days left, and I thought it's about time we pop back on to Arcadia, where it all began, because today I fancy decorating a river. And instead of starting up a new creative world to find a river, let's just use this one right here in my base. I have a river right here next to my base that I think could do with a little bit of decoration, and I decided, you know what? I kind of want to go a little bit swampy and marshy as it goes into the jungle here, and a little bit less swampy and marshy as it goes into this ocean over here. So I think I'm going to kind of start around here, I think, with some mud. That's going to be step one. I have this color palette I really like when I'm doing river transitions. So we start off with mud in the river, right, if you're going swampy, and then some soil into some hot soil, and then coarse dirt, and then you can mix that back into your grass quite easily, or some normal dirt. And like, this just looks so good from above, doesn't it? It's such a good color palette. So I'm gonna start by basically mixing this into the river, just a little bit of mud, not too much, but a little bit of color to give it that murkiness you would expect from maybe a river in the jungle. Now this is going to be a long-term project for me, so we're only going to do a small section today, because at the end, build of the day for me is a little bit time limited with the whole concept of getting a video out every single day and doing a little bit of building. Thank you. So let's work a little bit of this mud in here, and then let's go in with a little bit of soil. In fact, before we go any further, I should probably show off the exact section I'm working on, which is this little inland bit here. I'm going to remove a little bit of this crop field and really terraform this into a murky, swampy mess. Hopefully I'm going to like the end result. And as you can see, we're slowly bringing in that mud and soil there, and it's already making a massive difference the way this feels. Things are slowly coming together, and I like most of this gradient. I do need to work on it a little bit. Specifically, need to work on diffusing these colors a little bit more, because I have some really sharp edges here. And I do want to share a couple things I keep in mind when I'm doing this sort of terrain work, and when I'm texturing or doing a kind of tough gradient where the colors aren't the smoothest transition possible. And the way I kind of see it is I try not to have this happen. Specifically, I have my sort of darker color and my end goal color, and then I have the mid-tone in between, right? And I try to make sure that the light color and the darker color, they don't touch even diagonally in corners, because this just is really jarring, because they are touching even if it's very slightly. It kind of gives that weird illusion. So in instances like that, just add your middle color a little bit more, spread out the terrain even more. Like, scale is really the key, I think, here. But there's also other techniques you can use instead of scale to kind of bring this in a little bit together. Like, for example, over here, okay, we have touching colors, no go. I'm gonna add a little bit more pot soil. But the transition between the coarse dirt and the really bright green grass of the jungle biome is kind of tough on the eyes, not gonna lie. So what do you do in a situation like this? Because it feels like no matter how much we diffuse our coarse dirt into this grass here, it's always gonna feel a little bit off, right? It's such a sharp transition, and I think that's where you have to use other blocks on top. You can add your grass, you can add your ferns, yeah, but these are still really bright, and I think we actually want something here with lower saturation. So we're gonna use, we could use azalea. Compared to the jungle color of the grass, they're actually not that bright. The azalea leaves are normally really bright everywhere else, but honestly here, they really aren't compared to everything else. So it's almost like the vibrancy of the background dulls them a little bit. And similarly, we could use some birch leaves, which I've only got 4 of them, but these are even less saturated. Look at that. Now all of a sudden, when we have these birch leaves here on the ground, they kind of blend these green tones between pot soil, the coarse dirt, and the really bright grass quite well. So I think it's just a case of putting some transparent blocks on top. Or another thing you can do here as well, when you're faced with such vibrant colors, is to take attention away from them. And if I can find the right chest, here we go. This is one of the reasons I love crimson roots. We pop this here, it kind of goes with the poppies, and all of a sudden your eye, it doesn't look at the sharp contrast between the green and the brown here. It looks at the crimson roots instead, especially when you smudge them everywhere to make it a little bit more cohesive. We're tricking the eye into looking past the terrain and into the objects on it. I do actually want to add that you can also add moss. We are making a path here apparently instead. You can add moss instead of the grass. Specifically in this instance, I do think in most biomes, moss is a little bit brighter than grass, so it doesn't always help with the transition. But in jungles, we can get away with it by adding a little bit of moss here to blend things out as well. Here I'm kind of doing that thing again where my colors are touching, which is not necessarily bad in all instances, but I am trying to avoid it very slightly. So let's put coarse dirt and then a little bit of moss. There we go. And honestly, even the path blocks, they aren't too bad to kind of give this terrain a little bit of texture. The colors are fine. It gives it a little bit more of a beaten down look, and obviously dimension of any sort is always a good look. So over here we have a very flat piece of terrain. You know, I've just done a little bit of texturing here. I've not even finished with this corner, but it's very flat. So let's start adding some decorations. Of course, we can go for the short grass on the podzol. Again, this is very bright in the jungle, so let's go for something a little bit less saturated by bringing out those good old birch leaves. Oh yeah, lovely. Pop some in the water as well, and I'm out. Let's grab some azalea leaves, and even spruce leaves could work in the water. I do like spruce leaves in water because they're a little bit darker, especially when you have them completely submerged. It looks like some sort of water murky growth. It's a very scientific term for it, but it's some sort of algae almost. You can use some pickles and you can place these literally everywhere, and they're also this nice deep green color that's not too bright, not as bright as these vines, for example, which I also need to get rid of. I really wish we could shear these. I'm going to texture this a little bit further by adding some muddy mangrove roots. This is quite bad of me, but I honestly just forgot they were in the game, but they kind of go perfectly here between the podzol and the soil and the normal mud. So a little bit of this soil here. Oh yeah, these are gonna work great over here. And I'm kind of changing my mind on the azalea bushes. I always feel like they're still a little bit too bright. They do kind of tie in the drip leaves a little bit, so I do want to use some azalea bushes, but I'm gonna maybe put them closer to the sort of center of the river almost, as things get brighter away from the shore. Maybe that's a good idea. It kind of makes sense in my brain, at least a little bit. So let's get rid of this drip leaf and move it further. And it's okay if it's completely submerged. It just looks like fancy river plant of some sort. And speaking of river plants, I think it's time to add one of my favorite things to do. Everybody loves a good old cattail, right? They just work so well. So let me go grab myself some green glass paints. Now the important thing here is to make sure it doesn't really touch anything, but it's okay if it touches leaves because obviously that's not going to connect. Cute. And all we need to do is just spam these at various heights everywhere. Oh, this is exactly what we want to avoid because that looks kind of ugly. So there we go. This makes such a massive difference, honestly, guys. You just bring a lot of life into this. Yep, that's how you place candles. Into this kind of swampy, marshy, rivery bit. Oh, needs loads more. Do you think this transition still needs a little bit more work? So I actually think jungle logs here kind of work. No? It almost looks like roots of some sort growing out the ground, but I really like the green tones here next to the podzol. So I'm going to add some jungle wood in here as well. There we go. I might have gone a little bit overboard with the cattails, but I do see this being a consistent theme across my river as I expand it over across the shore and also in that direction and a little bit more in that direction as well. So while it might not make too much sense just now, it will long term. So please tune in to my Arcadia Let's Play in a couple weeks or months whenever I get around to this to see the final result. But overall, yeah, I'm really liking the way this has come out. You can obviously see where I have decided to stop trying for today. But I did bring in some of those red corals. They kind of match the crimson roots over here, and I think that works brilliantly. We have this cohesive red theme going across this whole swamp. I just want to explain how much having this difference in height really adds to this place. That's why cattails I think are so good, not only because they look adorable and realistic and cute, but also because you do need height sometimes in your builds. And having these really thin glass panes, they're probably one of the thinnest blocks you can get in the game. It looks really, really good. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there for today. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it. I tried to explain a little bit more of my thought process than I did last time I did a river, which was only last episode in Arcadia. It's not been too long, but I really enjoyed this process. All right, guys, let's see you in the next one. Goodbye. Oh, I broke that.